We're here back in Hallwalls virtual space, also known as my desk at home, uh, doing socially distant studio visits with artists that we've shown over the years. And today we're talking with Katie Bell in Brooklyn, New York. And Katie's exhibition, Abstract Landscape, exhibited at Hallwalls this year in January and February. And at the moment has the ignominious uh, distinction of being the last exhibition that the public could actually walk in and see, because the following exhibition we installed, but it didn't actually open because the coronavirus rode into town on a pale horse. So I don't know, that's, I have no award to give you for that, but it's notable. It was a great show. We miss it. It's behind me here on my fake green screen a little bit.
Yeah, I like the
so let me start by asking, how are you?
I'm okay. I mean, I think, not unlike most people, it's a really surreal time. I was sick now like a couple weeks ago, so that's kind of rocked. Both my partner and I were sick in our apartment, so that kind of rocked our world a bit. So now we're just kind of like back to basics a bit.
Now, in terms of your sickness, about a month ago, roughly, I saw, just as this was sort of really starting to churn, and especially in Europe, where we were hearing a lot about cases in Italy and other countries, I saw you posted this fairly long Instagram story with a bunch of pictures from you were apparently in Europe somewhere, and I was thinking, Katie, what are you doing? Where were you, and what was up with
I
that?
was in India.
Oh, in India. Okay,
And
right.
yeah, but I mean, it's one of those things in retrospect, it just feels like, how could I have been traveling? But it really was this moment in time. I mean, as you talk about my show being the kind of moment like when everything was normal, it was just on the brink. So I was up at Hall Walls. We took down the show. I came back to New York, and we've been planning a trip to India for about a year because one of our best friends was getting married there. And we were doing all of the research, talking to everyone we could, and it just felt we were supposed to leave. We left on March 11th, and things were really bad in China. Things were starting to be kind of bad in Italy, but it wasn't obviously at its peak yet. And we just thought we were supposed to be there for 2 weeks. Our friends were kind of saying like the wedding was definitely going to happen. How bad can it get in 2 weeks? It just kind of seemed like at the time everything wasn't, I work at a carousel for my day job. I was working at the carousel the day before I left. Like the carousel was open. I was on the subway every day. It just felt like, I don't know, going to India for a couple of weeks. I couldn't, at the time, I just couldn't imagine it, obviously, as it is now. And so we took off on March 10th. It's like a 16-hour flight. Our flight was really empty. We had like the whole row to ourselves, which kind of felt good in a way, but also eerily like, maybe we shouldn't be here. But I don't know. We got to the airport. They did a temperature screening. We filled out paperwork. We got to this Airbnb house we were staying at, turned on our phones once we got to Wi-Fi, and it was in those 20 hours, just everything had flipped. India had banned any foreign travelers into the country. We were the last plane to come in. We didn't know that at the airport, but it made sense in retrospect because the airport was just totally empty. Trump had just banned like all of the European countries from coming into the US. So, and then the wedding was canceled because nobody could come in to India that was traveling for the wedding. And so we got to India and we're just like, we just felt so stupid, but it just, everything just switched so quickly.
Did you
Yeah, so it
stay
was
there for
quite
a
a,
while?
what'd you say?
Did you stay there for a while?
We were there for 40 hours. It was just kind of a disaster. I mean, um, it was quite disconcerting, scary. We didn't really know like how to get information. We ended up going to the US consulate to try to kind of, but they didn't really have much to say besides like if I were you, I would get on the next plane out of here because everything's happening so quickly. There's just no way to predict. So that's kind of what we did. We got on a plane like 2 days later and came back. So we had this really, I had never been to India before. We were in Delhi. We had this like really kind of intense 2 days where we just tried to fit in everything we really wanted to see and tried to have fun, but obviously it just was this really pressurized moment.
I mean,
At
it
the
must
time
have
in
been
India,
really weird coming home.
I mean, it was like, yeah. So because of the kind of uncertainty of everything, our flight was just totally packed. And it just, I mean, I don't know if this was like now in my head or if it was the actuality of it, but it just felt like every single person was coughing on the plane. And it's a lot, 16-hour flight. You're like cooped up, they're serving you food, and that feels weird. I like tried not to drink any liquid, so I didn't go to the bathroom the whole time. I was just like, with like the wipes. We didn't have masks at the time. I just had like Purell, and you're trying to like wipe down everything, but there's just no stopping it. So yeah, we got back to New York. It felt really surreal. Basically immediately just kind of hunkered down in our apartment, and then we basically ended up getting sick like 5 days later.
Now, do you know whether you were sick with the virus?
No, I mean, not for certain, because there's just not enough. They're saving tests for people that would really need to know an answer in order to like, figure out their course of treatment. My partner Stefan has pretty bad asthma, and so we were more worried about, or I was more worried about him, just because his breathing is already like, not great. So he was able, because of his asthma, to get like an online doctor's appointment with like a ER doctor, which was really actually kind of comforting in a way. And the doctor on the screen was like, 99% chance you guys have corona. I mean, he was just kind of like, I mean, maybe they're just telling everybody that, like, assume you have it, act like you have it. But the symptoms just lined up. It was like the breathing thing, fever, cough. Luckily for us, it really was pretty mild. It was mainly just kind of the like tightness in the chest and a cough, and the fever wasn't that bad for us. So we've really been isolated in the apartment.
Now, you were saying that you were working the day before you left for India, so it must have been, that's quite a whirlwind to be working the day before you left, and then the day you arrive, like the atmosphere in your neighborhood must have been really weird to enter into.
Yeah, and there's something kind of, I've just never spent this much time in my apartment. And there's a weird, like the first 2 weeks we were back, I almost felt like we were still on vacation because I had mentally prepared to be away for 2 weeks. So there was that kind of transition where I felt like the first bit of it was kind of, I don't know, it just felt like kind of this odd vacation, strangely. But then when we got sick, and obviously then you kind of start to get more in touch with the news, all of a sudden the kind of thinking around it really shifts. And I think that's kind of like the whole time I've been kind of struggling with feeling pretty relaxed and stressed out at the same time. I mean, maybe most people, it's like you're kind of in the comforts of your own house. You're able to like have time for things you didn't have time for before, but then you're also just kind of utterly panicked and stressed. It's a really like odd combination of things that I feel like probably most of us haven't really experienced before. I don't know, it's an odd.
What neighborhood are you in Brooklyn?
We're in Crown Heights.
So what's it like on the ground in Crown Heights? Are people observing social distancing? Is it, I asked this of another artist in New York, is it, does it feel like you're living in a horror movie scenario, or does it just feel like an especially quiet Sunday afternoon every day?
Yeah, it's definitely quiet. I mean, I think the eerie thing is you're really in tune to when you're hearing sirens because everything is so quiet and then there's sirens just pretty constantly. I would say that's kind of the eerie soundtrack of for me. It's also kind of a strange time because it's starting to be spring and like it's been warm out and there's a bunch of birds out. So we have the windows open. So it's kind of this like it doesn't really there's not the street traffic noise. There's a bus stop right outside our house. So the bus service is like been pulled way back. And so there's just not the kind of normal hums and drums of the kind of, routines of this city. I think the thing that's been eerie is like sometimes we really have been, the first 2 weeks, we really, really isolated. We didn't go out at all. Like not even to go get our mail in the lobby of our building. And so now I've been like going to get the mail and like I went to the grocery store yesterday and that's where it's eerie. The grocery stores maybe it's the same in Buffalo. They're limiting the amount of people in the store at a time. So you have to wait in line. And then the stores were just really empty. They've like replaced some aisles with like what I would consider kind of quarantine food, like just tons and tons of ramen. That was eerie yesterday where I felt like, oh, maybe this is going to get weird, or maybe because this is kind of supposed to be the kind of apex that they're not getting as many deliveries, or there's maybe not as many trucks coming into the city with food and things like that.
Tons of ramen. Wow.
Yeah, that was weird to me. They had, normally, there's a ramen section next to the soup that's like, a little shelf area, but it was like half a row was just all boxes of ramen. And
Wow.
that was weird. Kind of made me nervous a little, made me like buy extra milk. Cause I was like, maybe there won't be milk the next time I'm here. Yesterday it was unusually nice, maybe same for you. It was like 65 or something. And I heard the noise, which normally is a very New York noise, the ice cream truck sound. And so there was an ice cream truck out yesterday, which that felt horror movie like this should not be the noise of now. But yeah.
Speaking of what should be the noise of now, I'm gonna just share on my screen something, if I can, for a second. Oh, maybe I can't. I was going to share. An image, though I can't find it now, of Jane's carousel in Dumbo, where
Oh,
you work,
yeah.
because I was thinking how that is. Like now is the moment where a venue like that is got to be increasingly busy with weddings, with events, with spring things, and
Totally.
how weird is it not to be there right now?
Yeah, and I think that's actually been the thing that strangely kind of keeps coming to my brain. And actually, I've been having a lot of dreams about the carousel, and specifically like the organ music that plays at the carousel is so ingrained into like my body now. I don't hear it really when I'm there. I actually kind of enjoy it. People always ask if it gets annoying, but lately it's been like in my dreams the music of the carousel. And there's something kind of eerie about, yeah, it's the last place I'd want to be. It's like, why would you want to be in a place that's literally just like spinning with people and germs and oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm usually there a few days a week. And actually strangely, one of the kind of projects I've been working on creatively at home, which has actually been really a challenge for me, is so I worked at the carousel for almost 10 years now. And there's been a lot of things over the years that I've documented just on my phone as I'm working. It's kind of this place that I would say attracts a lot of odd, unusual things, characters, spectacles. Um, and I've always wanted to make some. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm in the process of kind of going through my phone and my computer to really compile everything in a kind of way that I can see it as a mass. I've always wanted to do some sort of project with it, like if it's a something in a book form or in a digital form. Um, but it's interesting that now is the time that I'm somehow reflecting more on the kind of my life as a carousel operator versus like my artwork. To me right now, my artwork is like, it's not, I'm not even actively like, oh, I don't feel like thinking about that. It's just somehow like not even in my brain right now. Like I can't, it just feels so far removed from where I am and like where the world is that it, to me, I'm like, it just needs to stay almost in like a freezer format where it's like, it's fun seeing the image of my show behind you, but it's like, I just want to like put it all in a freezer and open the freezer in the fall. Like I don't, somehow it's like, oh, so many friends are, I don't know, like making drawings and collages and little watercolors, and somehow they're still able to kind of use materials that they're used to. And I just like can't even touch it. But somehow the carousel's something I want to think about that's to me like related to my work in this like really kind of, you know, distant way.
So why do you think that is? Why do you think that you sort of feel like just turning off the practice for the moment?
I think this is like a moment where a lot of things get put into perspective, and it's interesting that somehow it just doesn't, like I can't get myself to feel, maybe it's like a part of it is feeling like relaxed enough to even like I feel like the things that involve creative energy, like I've been doing a lot of puzzles and like kind of busy work. And I think where I get the most out of my work is the kind of like physical nature of it. I think if I were able to, I'm not able to go to my studio right now. So if I were able to go to my studio, I have a feeling what I would be doing is just moving things around, like not really making, but just like moving objects from one part of the studio to the next, maybe like painting, moving. It's more just about kind of this like nervous energy of just shuffling things around. And so I think for to think about my work, even to, I don't know, like look at images and draw or like write about it or something, like I'm just not even, it's like I'm just too nervous to even, I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like I'm just not in a headspace to think about it.
It does. And I mean, it's interesting. You mentioned that other artist friends of yours are taking time to make work in their quarantined states. And I certainly know people that are doing that. But yeah, I mean, I can appreciate just wanting to be removed from that as well, because it is an entirely different headspace than what we're currently living in. So when things return to normal, whatever normal is going to be, what do you think one of the first things you want to do is, big or small?
Yeah, it's funny. Stefan and I have been making a list of all the things that we're like, okay, after quarantine, we want to go do this. And one of the things was maybe because we're watching The Sopranos and whatever it happens in The Sopranos, but go to the Bronx Zoo. Like, there's something like, you know, it's like you want to just like get out there and like see some things like in the world. I've never been to the Bronx Zoo, sadly. Feels like I should go. So I think there's like some kind of, I don't know, things like that. Um, Weirdly, I had some, you know, things going on with my work that I was really excited about, and a show that was supposed to, who knows, maybe it'll still happen in the fall, but a show that was going to be coming up, that I was really excited about. And so I'm kind of curious, you know, there's that kind of momentum that gets going in your studio once you get excited about something and you're there every day and you're, you know, the energy is kind of building around something. I'm curious when I go back to my studio if it'll kind of click right back in, or if maybe I'll kind of, you know, given some time away, see things a bit differently. In some ways, I'm kind of hoping that happens. Like there was something around the kind of rolling energy where you don't question things maybe as much as you should, and like one thing rolls into the next. And sometimes that can be really positive, but I think right now it actually feels like taking some time to really be considerate about what I'm doing and like kind of question why I'm making things might actually be a really positive thing given the circumstances. Like somehow it feels like if in September I was going to make the same show that I had in my mind in February, and we went through this crazy thing, and I'm like, yeah, it's just like the same show that, you know, it just was in the freezer and I took it out and now it's thawed and like it's cool. Uh, it doesn't feel like that would be right. Like it does feel like it would make sense that some sort of shift in thinking happened, or yeah, kind of a something happened.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what, because your work is not, driven by particular content in the work.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see what kind of minor paradigm shift might take place.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think that's kind of the maybe the hard part, right? Is that like maybe when you're an artist and there's kind of this tragedy happening and you're not the one making Guernica or whatever equivalent, you know, your work maybe doesn't directly deal with something in kind of like a content-based narrative depicted way. it it's interesting, right, how maybe that gets kind of folded into what you're doing in a different way, you know, that's not as linear or straightforward.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for taking a few minutes today to talk to us. I'm glad that you are back safe from India. I'm glad that you're over your illness. I hope you get to the Bronx Zoo real soon and have a terrific time there.
Thank you so much, John. It's good to talk to you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.